You ever see this guy with the pillows on Fox? My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell. He is the greatest. The My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell. And he's been with us right from the beginning.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Lindell Show. And back in Minnesota, lots of big things are going to be going on this week with our election platform, all kinds of stuff. And today we're going to have, I'm going to show you with our new format, everybody. I would be talking to one of our great DC correspondents, Allison or Kara. But today, and then after we would do that, then we have a segment about our election. It's called Melting Down the Machines. And what machines are we talking about? Of course, we're talking about voting machines there, Jimmy Crumble or Jimmy Kimball or whatever we call him this week. He always makes fun of me saying, Mike, are you afraid of all machines? No, just voting machines we have to get rid of. So it's called Melting Down the Machines. And in that segment we're going to bring stuff from the past, from way back in 2020, the stolen election, and then bring things on in the present. And today I'm going to have you watch a video. This video came out in November of 2020. It was maybe late November, maybe early December of 2020, right after the stolen election. I want you to put yourself back in time, everybody, and see, the seeds that were planted then, the anomalies, the deviations that didn't make sense. It's one of my favorite videos. I always think of it. I go, wow, because this video actually sparked me, in a lot of ways going, hey, I'm not the only one finding deviations out there, which I did in November and December of 2020, the things that didn't make sense, that they couldn't explain. And what a blessing it was that we had these deviations back then. And we're going to be going back, I'll give examples like, we'll go back to say, what the government said, Chris Krebs saying it's the most secure election ever and stuff like that. And then, where we're at today. So it's kind of like, back then, as you know, the president is going to be putting together a special prosecutor and task force where they go back in time to prosecute criminals like Jenna Griswold, hopefully in Colorado, and Dominion when they deleted the 2020 election in Colorado, and in 2021, in the spring of 21, and that's where we're going to we'll kind of focus on that today, because I am going to bring on Colonel Sean Smith, and credentials you wouldn't even imagine. He is president of the Cause of America, worked with our government. He's a cyber guy. He's he's as much or more knowledge about anyone about electronic voting machines and the need to get rid of them probably anybody. And he also, Colorado. He's also goes back to, so I want you all to watch the video, and then we're going to bring on Sean, and we're going to bring you back in time to Colorado or to the country back in 2020, early 21. And then we're going to tell you where we're at today. And that's what we're going to do on this segment just about every day, but we'll be using different states. Today, I want the focus with bringing Sean on to be quite a bit on Tina Peters and what happened in Colorado, and also the plan to get her out. I know our team's had a great plan, and we'll talk about that. So I want you all to watch the film, watch this film, and just let yourself go back to that, how horrific and how we felt back in December of 2020. And how we felt when everyone's going, "What? This can't be. This can't be." And it does. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. It was like living inside of like a twilight zone. But anyway, why don't we go ahead and roll that? And and we'll see you in about 15 minutes.
No matter which side of the fence people have been on, they've been saying, "Show me the evidence. I'll believe it when I see the evidence." And people on both sides agree that something went terribly wrong in November 2020, but there really has been no comprehensive place to see the evidence of widespread fraud. Until now. This video is pure data, so don't get mad. You can't be angry when a scientist confirms that gravity pulls downward at -9.8 meters per second squared, even when that fact works against the narrative you've heard. So here we go. Just before we show you some new disturbing video evidence, we'll talk about statistical anomalies in 3 states in question. In the early hours of November 4th, 2020, Democratic candidate Joe Biden received several major vote spikes in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia, suddenly placing him in the lead when he had been trailing Trump by a significant margin. 8,954 individual vote updates were analyzed. Across nearly all updates, there follows a clear statistical pattern. However, a very small number of batches are especially questionable. The 4 most notable aberrations were 2 in Michigan, 1 in Wisconsin, and 1 in Georgia. And all occurred in the same 5-hour window, in the middle of the night, when in some places counting reportedly had stopped. Not only do these updates not follow generally observed patterns, but their behavior is particularly extreme. For context, using publicly available data from the New York Times, here is a visualization of the number of votes by candidate in Michigan from the beginning of the election night to 7 p.m. Eastern Time on November 4th. Trump is in red, Biden is in blue. Notice the sudden and improbable spike in votes for Biden at 6:30 a.m., where Biden received 141,258 votes, while Trump only received 5,968. This extreme ratio is surrounded by updates that are nearly the same in ratio. This particular update is 23 times more votes for Biden, and is the most extreme update favoring Biden in all datasets across all states. The situation in Wisconsin is even more stark. A single update to the vote count brought Biden from trailing by over 100,000 votes into the lead. Thirdly, a vote update in Georgia at 1:34 a.m. Eastern Time on November 4th, which shows 136,155 votes for Joe Biden and only 29,115 for Donald Trump. The extents of these 4 vote spikes in question are more than the margin of victory in all 3 states, which means the spikes were not only abnormal in regards to percentage for Joe Biden, but also in magnitude of the vote count. Out of roughly 9,000 updates, this election was decided by only 4 extreme updates, each with a probability of less than 0.1%, meaning that had these 4 unlikely updates not happened, we would have a different president in the White House. Detractors argue that these spikes were merely human error and not indication of fraud, and the errors have been corrected. If the errors have been corrected, where is their evidence? Why were the results never changed? Others have said that the spikes indicate heavily Democratic precincts. If that were the case, then California would show many spikes of that magnitude, but it doesn't. Only 1 vote update in California is anomalous in percentage of Biden votes, but not enough magnitude to shift an outcome. The strangest anomaly visible in the data is a consistently identical ratio of Biden to Trump votes across time, which is theoretically impossible. Here is Florida. These updates occurred over a week following the election. Notice all the ratios of Biden to Trump votes are 100% identical over several days. This pattern shows up in many states. It appears that a computer algorithm is involved in the process, which is doing something called weighted race distribution, a feature of Diebold voting machines known as early as 2001, which gives values to votes rather than simply counting them. Here in California, we see an update of 1 vote. About 65% of that value is given to Biden and 32% to Trump. How can 1 vote go to more than 1 person? It is well known and not disputed that Diebold software was found to be switching votes through programming in past elections. Even though Diebold is no longer used, Dominion Voting Systems acquired ES&S in 2010, which had previously acquired Diebold under its new name of Premier Election Solutions. This does not exhaust all statistical data anomalies encountered in the 2020 election, but data anomalies is only one factor to consider. Next is eyewitness and video evidence. In Georgia, there's a case of a poll worker named Ruby who was seen on Instagram giving a secretive live video of her working in the back room filled with absentee ballots.
I'm gonna let y'all see this. Okay, don't say nothing. Listen, look.
At 10:30 p.m. on November 3rd, all media and poll watchers were told to leave State Farm Arena because ballot counting was going to stop. But Ruby and her daughter and 3 others remained behind at State Farm Arena. They pulled boxes of ballots out from under the table that was placed there in the morning and distributed them to several counting stations.
back to Fulton County, Georgia right now, where our reporter Blaine Alexander apparently has some new reporting on the expectations for that count.
Well, Rachel, we've learned that the counting continues tonight. You know, right here in State Farm Arena behind me, we've learned that there are 5 people who are still inside, still working to scan those absentee ballots and try and get those numbers tabulated. Now, initially, we were told that everybody went home at about 10:30, but I just got off the phone with the county spokesperson who tells me that indeed there are still some people in there, quite literally burning the midnight oil, scanning ballot after ballot and trying to get that information in.
And Blaine, specifically, you said 5 people are inside that building? That's 5 of 5 actual individuals who are working on all the absentees in Fulton County right now? Just 5? Wow. Talk about having the sort of fate of the nation in your hands.
Ruby is seen here in this video running the exact same stack of ballots through the machine 3 times. Other workers do the same. Note that a large surge in Biden votes can be observed after this tabulation at 06:34 Greenwich Mean Time, which is 1:34 a.m. in Georgia, just after the time in question. You may ask, can a ballot really be counted more than once? Here is your answer from Coffee County, Georgia.
Can you scan a ballot more than once?
I've just done it.
I'm talking about
That's
you
the
just,
same batch that she's been doing.
you just keep scanning.
I just kept scanning that same.
You just keep something.
I just scanned the same batches that y'all just voted. I never got any more until that one.
I don't know why they approve such a system.
Ruby allegedly posted this later on social media. Of course, the mainstream media calls this misinformation, and most references to these videos have been deleted from internet search results. Apple News, the morning of the election, sent out a push message to Apple News subscribers that elections are secure. So if it's true that election fraud is rare, what about Raquel Rodriguez? She was recently arrested for election fraud in Texas because of overwhelming video evidence incriminating herself that she was harvesting ballots for pay.
Look at the top of ticket to get votes for either Biden. How many votes you think you can deliver for us?
At least 5,000.
And what are we looking at as far as how much that's going to cost?
For the entire team that I'm looking at $55,000.
So $55,000 for 5,000 votes, top of the ticket, eager Biden.
If not more, I'm not going to overpromise because remember, we're 16 days till election day. You give me cash, you can do whatever you want to do.
$55,000 up front, 5,000 votes.
That's right.
Then there is cybersecurity evidence and the question of whether Dominion voting machines were tampered with over internet connections. Signed affidavits under oath from cybersecurity experts indicate that Dominion voter systems and Edison Research were using an unencrypted VPN with login credentials that were easily accessible and used by foreign adversaries to monitor and manipulate votes. The IP addresses into the Edison Research host service went in both directions, meaning that not only were China and Iran and other countries accessing the servers, but also Edison Research was communicating back to these adversaries. The claims that Dominion voting machines were not connected to the internet are completely false. Cybersecurity experts have followed the communication of the data from Dominion voting servers and Edison Research to foreign countries. A simple web search will uncover that DominionVotingSystems.com is registered to a company in Hunan, China. 3 of the 7 board members of UBS Securities are Chinese nationals. That company owns Staple Street Capital, which in turn owns Dominion. On top of that, the Dominion software is licensed from Smartmatic, which is a Venezuelan-owned and controlled company, and we're all familiar with how their elections go. Furthermore, forensic audits of the machines reveal significant errors. Although the mainstream media and politicians are saying that it's dangerous misinformation that Dominion voting systems are unsecure, this was the very message that several left-leaning news sources were claiming less than a year ago. NBC News and PBS found out just how easy it is to hack voting machines or cast fake votes.
It's important to note that Georgia just spent is about to spend over $100 million on a contract with Dominion to provide image cast hardware to the state in time for the for the next primaries and for the 2020 election. And yet here these kids were who had opened it up. They said, look, you can pop the front off of it and here's a port you can get into right here. That's easy. You know, all kinds of stuff that you could certainly do within 6 minutes behind a curtain, much less if you had extra time because any of these were connected to the web, as we discovered a couple of days before. So many of them are.
Despite opposition and attacks, election security experts were able to audit Dominion voting machines in Antrim County, Michigan, revealing unusually high error and adjudication rates. What does that mean? According to the report, Dominion Voting Systems is intentionally designed with inherent errors to create systemic fraud and influence election results. Ballot errors are sent to adjudication, which means the vote can be decided by an election worker where there is no oversight, no transparency, and no audit trail.
We've scanned 113,130 as of moments ago. We've adjudicated 106,000 plus of those.
Experts identified an error rate of 68.05%, which is far above the Federal Election Commission guidelines of 0.0008%, or 1 in 250,000. Although vote adjudication logs are available for prior election years, suspiciously, all the logs for the 2020 cycle were missing. Moreover, all security logs prior to 11:03 p.m. on November 4th are also missing. If that's not enough, the election event designer log shows that the Dominion image cast precinct cards were reprogrammed on October 23rd and again on November 5th, which violates the Help America Vote Act, which includes a 90-day safe harbor period that prohibits changes to election systems, registries, hardware, and software updates without undergoing recertification. Even if skeptics and critics persist that these issues are inconsequential, they should be willing for forensic audits to take place for transparency, yet they have viciously attacked attempts to review logs. Why is that if there's nothing to hide? Election officials in Maricopa County, Arizona have even ignored subpoenas for release of election data and Dominion machine audits until after the inauguration. Then there's the mass influx of unsolicited mail-in ballots. The key word is unsolicited. In other words, people receiving ballots they never asked for. Politicians use the coronavirus to push mass mail-in ballots and extending the time to receive those ballots till many days after the election. There are many reports of people who voted in person also receiving multiple unsolicited ballots in the mail. People who did not send in a mail-in ballot denied in-person voting because they were told they had voted already by mail when they hadn't. This opened up chaos in the system and uncertainty as to who actually voted. Additionally, signature verification requirements were slackened in many states, adding even more uncertainty. In fact, the Pennsylvania Secretary of State unilaterally removed legislative signature requirements for mail-in ballots. More than 1,000 signed affidavits have been given by poll workers who have witnessed illegal activities, non-equal treatment of Republican poll watchers, counting ballots in locations with no poll watchers not permitted close enough to see the counting process, shredding ballots, garbage bags full of ballots for Trump, entire boxes of hundreds of supposedly mail-in ballots that have no folds, indicating they were never actually mailed by anyone. The list goes on and on. These affidavits are signed by witnesses under penalty of perjury, so this should not have been taken lightly, but these witnesses were never heard in court. Unfortunately, what we have covered is only the tip of the iceberg on fraud, cover-ups, federal election law violations, and dishonesty on a global scale.
So either the Secretary of State's office is recording and certifying results that have negative errors and fraudulent votes in them, or someone is giving them negative information.
Recent polls show an overwhelming percentage of the U.S. don't trust the 2020 election was without fraud. At the end of this video, the credits will be further data scrolling through that you can read for yourself, and pause and go back and read again. So what can you do? Firstly, find a way to download this video and share it. Film it with your mobile phone. Do anything to duplicate this. Post it with a hashtag, "Here is the evidence," hashtag every legal vote. Because guaranteed, big tech and social media giants will do their best to erase it from the internet, as they've already done with much of the evidence we've already shared. And if they can't erase it, they'll fake fact-check it. Well, guess what? We've already done the fact-checking. We've gone through thousands of pages of data, sworn affidavits, forensic reports, and cybersecurity reports. Secondly, you can demand election reform from your elected state and local officials. We cannot let another election ever be this questionable ever again. This is the United States of America. People used to look to us on how to have democracy through our voting system. 2020 was a complete sham, and it cannot ever happen again.
everybody, that brought back some memories for me. I first seen this back in, I believe it was December of 2020, and it's an anonymous guy that put that together and team. I've never been able to get his name, but how amazing was that? And you'd seen all those deviations listed, those mathematical impossibilities that were listed there. And I encourage you, we're going to have that video posted on LindellTV. We're going to reshare that all around this country to bring people back of what happened back then, what they had to do to cover up and attack and block that they're doing to this day, because this how they tried to steal our country without firing a shot. And they go, well, who did this? The Uniparty, the deep state globalists, CCP. That's who I believe. We watched that film, and I was trying to write down just these. I remember thinking back then, going, wow, this is going to get done so fast because it's all uncovered. This guy put out this video, and these things I was finding, doing my own due diligence back in December and November of 2020. I'm going, that's an impossibility. The media's going to show that and go, and they're going to dig into it. Well, as we all know, they never did. And one of the things in this video, they focus on Dominion, but I just want everybody to know ES&S is the biggest machine company in the United States for voting machines. The good old boys out of Omaha, Nebraska. It doesn't matter what the brand is. You heard the things about Diebold in there. And their past, and then with breaking antitrust laws, so I think it was ES&S had to sell some of Diebold to Dominion. It's all tied back to SmartMatic. They're all in cahoots. It's all tied together because why? What ties them all together? The internet. And you guys, I'm going to bring on my good friend and Colonel Sean Smith right now. Sean, how you doing?
I'm good, Mike.
Okay.
How are you?
And I want to tell you guys, we're doing pretty good. We got a lot of good news for the country, but you guys, Sean, I'm going to give you a little background on Sean from my perspective. Sean was in this fight, all the deviations you've seen, I think even long before I ever was. And Sean, you can tell everyone a little bit about your background in a second. But when I met Sean, they were these fighters in Colorado that were out there, and they were doing these things, canvassing and all this stuff. And this is the spring of 21, or I guess in 21. And I wanted to get a team together because put it together that would go out there and just start uncovering all the stuff you just seen in this movie, and going and just keep digging in and digging in and digging in. And I go out. I remember meeting with Sean and 3-4 others, and I'm going, and they wanted me to get to. They had this thing all set up called Cause of America to see if I would get behind them. Well, I took over the meeting and said, "Hey, you guys, I'm looking for a team. I'm looking for this. I got it in my head of what we're going to do, and go out and do all these things in all the states and put this national thing together. This to help secure our elections." And then Sean goes, you know why? He goes, well, we have that. Here it is. I'm seeing this presentation going, did someone tell you about this earlier? I mean, it was just, I think it was a very divine connection, Sean, beyond belief. And by the way, everybody, Sean has led this. He's president of Cause of America. He has led this tirelessly, no pay, and just because he loves our country. Ever since I've known him, he's been on board with securing our election since the 2020 election, and maybe before. Sean, what were you doing a little? If you can tell everyone, give us your history, and then I want to get into what we're doing with this new segment. Is we're bringing people back in time. I just rolled a 15-minute video. I don't know if you've seen the tail end of it. It was done back in 2020. Never found out who did that, but he just tells it like it is there. Everything we all know to be true, everything in there we know to be true now over the last 4 years. And that was just, what would you call it? The tip of the iceberg. That was what he had there was just a teaser from what we've uncovered. But I want to tell people what your background is and what you as a colonel, what you did and why you know so much about. I told him you've forgotten more about cybersecurity machines in our elections than most people will ever know. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was an Air Force officer. I was on active duty for a little over a quarter century. It was great. I loved it. Not every second of it, but the teams, the people and the mission. If you love your country, then you got to love getting the chance to do that kind of work to defend it. And so my specialty, I was in space and missile operations. So I started off in intercontinental ballistic missiles, and then went into what's called space control. Space control is defending our space capabilities and access, and being prepared to negate or disrupt or destroy adversary space capabilities. A lot of that work is done either at a very high classification level or within compartmented security, because you're trying to protect sensitive capabilities and sometimes very narrow technical advantages, or things that you just don't want other nations and foreign adversaries to know that you do. So that's how I ended up getting into what we call vault work or compartmented work, and so I got a lot of exposure there because of the defensive work, also to threats from foreign adversaries. But also, when I started doing cyber, it wasn't called cyber; it was called network attack or network defense or offensive computer network attack and defense, and that was back in like 99, 2000. The intelligence agencies were doing it, but the military wasn't doing that much of it. We were operating networks like, they were a backbone for communications, but we weren't doing that much with them as weapons, either against us. And also, most of our platforms then were not highly computerized, but over time, we were getting more and more computerized. So that, like now, it's hard to even find artillery shells without computers in them, or GPS guided munitions, and so there's computers everywhere. And in the same time frame, more and more of U.S. manufacturing was offshore deliberately by a lot of like investment groups and hedge funds and things like that. And so they moved that so that they could increase their profits to cheaper manufacturing overseas, a lot of it into China. And so then we weren't in control. In the same time frame that we were getting more and more integrated circuits and computers and software into our weapon systems and national security architecture, more and more of the manufacturing of that and development of it, and therefore the control over it, was moving overseas. So anyway, through that time frame, I continued to do national security work, compartmented within the military, and I ended up my last assignment. I did a lot of operational tests in the military. So I spent 4 years at Air Force Operational Test and Evaluation Center. An operational test is the last line of testing before you let weapons go into full procurement, or you let them be fielded into the hands of operators who are, hoping, they're going to be put in a position to use them in war. And so operational testers are the ones who are supposed to be protecting them from getting systems that can't fight or survive or be maintained. So I did that. And then the last thing I did on active duty was at under the Office of Secretary of Defense. There's an office called the Directorate of Operational Test Evaluation. And there was a job there for a senior military evaluator for space and intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance systems. And this guy's in a position to do oversight over operational testing of all space systems in the Department of Defense, except for satellite communications, which were done by a retired Army officer. So I handled GPS, global positioning systems, space-based infrared, space fence, and then weather satellite, all the compartmented systems. And when you do that, you have to get exposed, because you have to be able to test those systems and make sure that they're tested against the threats that they're going to be facing. So you really get up to speed on what the current adversarial capabilities are. And through that process, and then what I did for about a year after active duty, I was supporting my old office. They had asked me to help them with a project. And so I was doing that. We were looking at what adversaries had exfiltrated from U.S. national security systems and organizations over the previous few years, and then assessing what they could do with that information, what vulnerabilities they knew about, what weapon systems were no longer going to be combat effective because they could be precisely targeted either in spectrum or, their vulnerabilities. So I did that work, and then through that learned a lot more, even more than I knew before, about the current cyber capabilities of advanced persistent threats. All of that I had no idea was going to prepare me, because I had no intention of getting involved in elections. That was
Well, hold it right there. I want to ask you something there. So everybody, if you see this, I mean, you talk about God putting people in our lives for such a time as this. That preparedness there. That's what your job was. Here's computers, and you're in charge of our weapons. If they get hacked, it's over in effect, right? I mean, so you're trying. What are they capable of? What are we? Um, um, there's nothing really more important at that point. When you're using computers in your weapons, if the other side gets a hold and can control your weapons, here's a rocket, coming back at you. I mean, there's just you guys. So as Sean tells us, everybody, then what got him into the elections? I'm going to ask you this question before you even go there. When you just said that kind of trained me for such a time as this now. What do you think? I mean, if you had to put a thing on it, once you say the voting machines used in elections are as more important, or as important, or even more important than our weapons, because this is how you can take a country without even firing a weapon. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't thinking about it at all. When I was on active duty and immediately after, even though, so when I was in DC, that was my first assignment in DC. I avoided it. I avoided it on purpose my whole career. But then I had a chance after Squadron Command. They gave me a chance to go do some research that I wanted to do. And the price for going to do that with the RAND Corporation was I knew they were going to send me to DC afterwards. And so I went to DC, but the job I went into was probably the only job I could have done in DC without going insane, because my boss only cared about what was true. And so my whole job was to tell the truth about these programs and the threats mostly to Congress, to the acquisition people in Congress, the funding people. And, I didn't know anything about voting systems. I wasn't looking at elections at all. I had no idea what was being used anywhere. I couldn't have told you a single voting system vendor or anything that went into them, or the standards or anything. And then in 2019, I had started working with Convention of States, not because I was uniquely suited to it, but I thought they need help. I've got some time. I'd spent, after I retired and came to Colorado, I took my watch off and I didn't wear it for like 8 months. It was a really weird, disorienting experience. When you're in the military, you start at 5 a.m. or whatever, and your whole life is regulated by what your appointments and duties are. But anyway, so when I got involved in elections, it was an accident. I read an article about voter registration, and then I went and started reading, and I decided to do some analysis of voter data compared to population data, turnout, things like that. And then I realized that the voting system technical data and the test reports were online, and I could look at them. And that's what I did when I was in the Office of Secretary of Defense office. I read technical data and then made assessments and looked for vulnerabilities and compared that to the threat. So I just started doing that with voting systems and looking at the way they were being tested. And
now this is in 2019. Is that correct? Just so everybody knows.
2020. This was November 2020.
So this is leading up to the election, correct?
I didn't even start reading. I couldn't have named a voting system vendor or a single component prior to election day. But on election day.
Okay, so this is after the election.
Yeah, well, it was on the day of. It wasn't about the results. I was looking at the voter registration claims and the turnout claims, and I thought, that doesn't seem right. And I think by the end of the first day, I started reading my first voting system manual, and then the test reports and test plans. And when I looked at the test reports and test plans, I thought, based on what I just looked at as far as how these are configured and how they're assembled, what components and software they have in them, this can't possibly be all the testing that's done on these systems. because this is so grossly inadequate. Like if this was, so when I was doing oversight, one of the military services ran their acquisition and their test programs, and we were basically telling them if it was adequate or not. And there were times when I had to tell a military service, your testing is not adequate. We're not approving it. You cannot proceed with it. Here's what you have to do. And it really, I mean, I did that for programs that were in the, tens of billions of dollars in terms of their costs.
Okay, I want to ask you, Sean. I want to ask you there. So, everybody watching, you guys, I got on board because I've seen deviations. You just seen in that movie. I've seen deviations of people that 4,000 people lived in this state, and that voted that didn't live in the state. And I just couldn't imagine everybody going, "Hey, let's go into Wisconsin and vote for Biden and commit a crime." I knew there was just the numbers were too big. There were too many anomalies and deviations. You're telling me that you're because of your previous job, you're just looking, you're going, "Hey, maybe I should check into this," because you weren't doing it because something didn't seem right. You were just doing it because of your former job and going, "Hey, let's just see how secure our elections really are, or are these machines?"
Yeah, it was curiosity. So when I read this article about turnout on election, it was like in the afternoon. I had just gone and voted in person, and I read this article online. It was some Colorado, media outlet, and I thought that doesn't seem right. And I went to look, and because I started downloading data and then doing my own regression analysis to look at the progression of turnout and voter registrations. And I had never read any of the statutes or anything like that. I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
And you know what you're supposed to do, vote, and then how that's supposed to be counted, and that's it. You add them up, and that's your result. But then once I started looking at the voting system manuals, and I thought, is this really how our systems are built? And then I looked at the test plans and reports, and then I got into the federal standards and how they certify, and it was one of these things where, so there's a sort of a joke about software programming that the only accurate expression of maturity in software development is like what the hell's per minute, like how many times you say what the hell. So I was reading these test reports and the technical data on the voting systems, and I started saying, oh my God. And by the time I was about 3 hours into it, and I probably read, I get sort of fixated once I start studying something.
Yeah.
I read probably 90 PDF documents up into the hundreds of pages within 4 days. I'll just start reading, and I'll read 20 hours a day. And at the end, I was just saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, over and over again. So when I went and spoke in December of 2020 to the Colorado State General Assembly, to the Legislative Audit Committee, I just gave them a list of, look, this is what I know to be true, and these are things that stand out to me. When I see that the only people who've assessed for security the risk limiting audit software are a Canadian company with Iranian engineers, I think we probably have a problem.
Right. Sean, so everybody, there's two parallel tracks here, everybody. So I'm over here, and I was like Sean, only I was digging into, these are real numbers coming out of the machines, the voter rolls get from the counties, from the country. And I'm looking at numbers. I'm looking strictly numbers. I'm mathematics. It's all about math, going, this doesn't make sense. This is a deviation. How did that deviation happen? So I'm looking into that. You're looking into, not just Colorado, but you looked at nationally too, like, because machine security, you're going, this is probably your toaster probably has a better security system, or your refrigerator, than what these machines had, these voting machines had, or the regulations that weren't being followed, or that were being followed, I guess not being followed, because obviously or maybe you didn't know that then, if it was breaking any laws here in the United States, having a company up in Toronto, and all these parts from other countries and stuff. I suppose this is where I'm going to backtrack. When you've seen deviations then coming out about the 2020 election, crazy things like we just seen on the film before you came on, 106,000, all these computer patterns that came out in all these states, including states that Donald Trump won, but these different patterns coming out. Was that an aha moment going, hey, I'm right about these machines are this and this produced this, or were you just really focused on, hey, we've got there's problems in these computers and they're unsecure, anybody could hack them? Or what was your thought there? Were you just getting validation after validation from the deviations, or were you just hyper focused on the machines?
When I first started, I was looking at voter registration. Then I started looking at the machines, and then so I had questions about both. As I started to download more data and look at past data, but as I looked at the machines, my heart sunk in my chest because I know the threat, and I know, based on what had been done to our national security organizations and systems, we recommended some systems not be fielded, that they be canceled. We talked about, we recommended significant changes to defense procurement to try to counter this threat. And I also figured out in that time frame, while we were looking through that data, there were elements within our national security organizations at very senior levels who were aware of all of these penetrations and compromises and the exfiltration, and they didn't stop it. And I was so angry because, I buried friends under the flag, and here we have these, swamp rats that for whatever their reasons are, want to let these things.
Okay, I'm going to hold the swamp rats. I put people like that in the Brad Rassenberger category, everybody. I want to ask you this, Sean. Did it surprise you? You guys, do you understand, everybody watching, that this is, Sean's, I can compare myself to Sean in so many ways, and other people like us too, where once we've seen what we've seen and going, hey, we're losing everything. If that's why we haven't let up, we've never let up, because it's over. If we don't change this administration right now with our president, it's going to be a blip in history, and it's still going to be gone. There is no tomorrow. There has to be now. This is the now. That's why we've never let up. We got to get rid of the machines. That's why this segment's called Melting Down the Machine. We got to get rid of the machines. Like 132 other countries have banned electronic voting machines. Over 100 countries have banned early voting and mail-in voting. At that time, when this feeling, you just said, this sickening feeling comes over you, kind of like what I actually had in January 9th when I got evidence that it was computers. It was kind of an answer to my own research going, these numbers are impossible. People couldn't have done this. And then I get this aha moment in January, but I also had, wow, mine was of hope going, hey, we've caught it. We can now fix it very fast and get rid of this. Or, that was me going in January when you, but I want to ask you, and you probably had the same type thing. Hey, this is going to expose all this. Something's got to be done. We can fix it just like you did when you were working for the government. Hey, you guys think there's a problem here. But what was and I'm going to ask you this, because this was my biggest surprise right now, and you've already said it, Sean, my biggest surprise, everybody, when you go to these government officials, or you went to these Secretary of States or Attorney Generals or Congress or the President, whatever it was, and they go, and all of a sudden you're blocked, and you're going, why would you not want to look into this? Wasn't that your biggest surprise? And because you'd worked with the government, at least they listened to you then and going, hey, we got a problem here. Now they take in the information, and you just said sometimes, they would use it and make things stronger, better, so the hackers can't come in. But didn't it surprise you, as it did me, that you're getting blocked at every turn? And you guys, now Sean was in Colorado, as blue with the crooked Jenna Griswold and stuff. My stuff was mostly in red states, which, Sean, I'm sure you came to know now after 4 years, we get blocked by those uniparty Republicans as much as Democrats. Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
It's sad, you guys, because it doesn't make sense. You guys, we just had yesterday, we had stuff going on in Arkansas where we're trying, and where they can vote to go to paper ballots, and they did it 2 years ago. and they passed a bill there if you go to paper ballots in Arkansas, we're going to defund your county. So one of the counties says, we don't care. We're going to do it anyway. We're going to go to paper, pay for it. And then what do? This is going on right now, everybody. They're attacking these commissioners that did this and said they're saying, hey, we'll make a deal. We're not going to come after you for not having spending more money. I was about spending more money, but they're going after saying you can't be involved in elections for 14 years and stuff like this. And shame on you, Sarah Sanders. She's the governor of Arkansas. It's a red state. Donald Trump won it, so there's no problems here. I got so tired of hearing that. Well, Donald Trump, we don't have any problems in Ohio. We don't have any problems in Arkansas. You guys, it's disgusting. And then you get blocked by these blockers, and you look at yourself, Sean. We go, where you're from, and obviously you know that, your Griswolds and that there's a different agenda. But when you're dealing with these Republicans, you're going, what is this hidden agenda? Are you part of it? Are you a Brad Rassenberger? Are you a John Merrill? Are you a Robin Voss of Wisconsin? It's disgusting. This is what we're up against. There was a moment where I knew, and I guess it was by the summer of 21, where I knew this is bigger. This is way bigger than I could ever imagine because of the blockers. And it wasn't just the media. It was politicians across this country going, why would you not want to know? Why would you not want to know? Why would you not want to look into this? We're just raising our hands saying they're a big problem. So now I'm going to pivot. I want you to pivot because I'm going to have you back on it many times, Sean, on this segment.
Mike, that's what convinced me that it was fraud and not just vulnerability. That the compromise.
That's a good point. That's a good point because I'm going.
Why are everybody from looking?
Right. Yeah. It doesn't stop everyone. And here's me. I'm raising my hand in January, mostly in January, when I'm going. I felt like the only one out there getting shot full hole, my company and everything getting canceled. I'm going, hey, you guys, why are you? I don't care if I'm getting attacked. Because if I'm getting attacked, at least I can get the word out. Mike, you lost 3 more box stores today. How do you feel? Did you hear about the machine companies and our stolen election? Blango bingo, So at least I was able to talk because that's what lawfare did to our country on September 4th of 2021 when they started suing people just for raising their hand and going, hey, I seen something. Over 150 people were sent threatening letters. They look like mafia letters from Dominion. If you've seen something, you better hold all your evidence. The letters read like this: hold everything you have, your cell phone data stuff, because if you're saying you've seen something, you might end up in court. That's like, nobody move around, blow your brains out. It was disgusting. So you had all this coming together at once, and then you had heroes like Sean there, where you guys at that point, when you realize that you're getting pushback, nobody's doing anything, or they're not listening, and at one point you guys pivoted. I want to bring up 2 things. Because I'm going to accelerate. Otherwise we're going to run out of time. Like I say, I'm going to have you back from that point on. But I'm going to tell you 2 things, you guys. So they did originally, I think, tell us about your canvassing you did. I need you to tell us real quick the canvassing, because that was so important. Because you guys, what happens is you get data out of a machine, and if you don't have the paper trail to audit it or any paper to audit it, what you can do is you can go take these people that voted and go to their houses and say, I see 6 people here. 6 people voted here in this 1-bedroom household. Is this true? They go, no. 5 of them don't live there. They live in another state. 2 of them are passed away. And the lady that lives there doesn't even vote. So when did you guys start canvassing, or your group? Kind of take us real quick through that, and they, if you could.
I think it was April or May of 21 is when we started. So before the symposium, before we had ever met you, right? We had gone. You talk about meeting with public officials and then finding them resistant or indifferent. And so when I first went and talked to the General Assembly, I thought, this is great. I found all this information. I know what I'm talking about. I'll lay this out for them, and then they'll take action because they're public servants. I swear I thought like that. And so what they did, I swear this is what they did. On party lines, the Democrats voted against doing an audit of the election. They voted against talking in the future about doing an audit of an election. I swear they voted against saying the word audit in election in the same sentence. It was like that the only input, the whole entire, I was there for, I wouldn't wear a mask. It was during that time period. I wouldn't wear a mask in the chamber, so they made me stand outside, which was the worst thing they could have done, because then I met all these other people that I wasn't connected to at all, some of whom, one of whom was Ash Epp. So then I ended up with U.S. Election Integrity Plan, and that's how we ended up in that room telling you, look, this is what we think should be done. And then you said, great, can you start? And I said, whoa, we thought you were going to do this.
Another divine appointment. Right. You just tell you God guides all this, everybody. So Sean's forced to be outside of there, meeting these other people that have his back, other patriots, other people that said, hey, we got a problem. And this, you guys, this is a Democrat or a Republican problem. This is a people problem. We've got elections. We need elections.
I had never been a registered party member before. The only reason I joined the Republican Party is because of Dan Schultz. Because the precinct strategy, I concluded you have to change one of the parties from within if you want one to start doing the will of the people. And that's the one I picked because the other one's crazy.
And then you had people like me. Right. Yeah, it's a nonpartisan. And you guys, it's like me. When I was brought into all this, remember, I was an ex-crack addict. I had never voted in my life until 2016. I didn't know a filibuster from a millibuster. I knew nothing about it. But God uses all different people for different things. And maybe the setup of my life when I was, for my story back then, to be able to endure all the stuff I had when I was an addict and stuff, to be able to keep surviving these relentless attacks. But Sean, one of the two things I want to bring up, and I know we're getting direct about it. I'm going to go a little over maybe for a minute or two, Greg, but I want to bring up, so they did this canvassing basically because they were shut out by that thing and going, hey, we got to show that this is real. There's a real problem. There's no better way to do that than canvassing. And I'm going to tell you guys what they did. One of the biggest things that was won over the last 3 years, whatever it was Sean, they came after you guys and sued you for canvassing, tried to make it illegal. If they would have lost that, you guys, we would have lost one of our foolproof ways to audit an election is going right to the people. Did you do this? And you guys winning that and never giving up on that. I think that's part of saving the country, where winning that lawsuit. Can you tell us real quick, that lawsuit, they came after you because they wanted to get rid of canvassing altogether. Is that correct?
That's right. They had already gone after. So we were canvassing to find out what was true. Right. We started off with the Secretary of State's published data, and we said, let's just go find out if it's true. So we didn't ask how anybody voted, who they voted for. We just asked, did you vote? Is this person here? Did they vote the way the Secretary of State says they did? Did they vote by mail or in person the way the Secretary of State says they did? Is the party affiliation right? There were a lot of other things we could have asked and investigated, but those were the door-to-door things we chose. And this was hundreds of volunteers in Colorado went out and did this nights and weekends. And, it was organized kind of by county captains. And then we collected the data and analyzed the data. And so some things happened very early on. So I'm used to writing procedures in the military. I'm used to training people in the military. So we wrote procedures and training. We wanted everybody to be professional. We wanted them to be courteous. We wanted them to stick to the data questions we were asking, because we wanted to be able to put it together and analyze at the end, because it was designed to be able to infer about the rest of the state once you completed a certain number of counties. And that was all done by Jeff, because Jeff was a real data guy. He wasn't some amateur. He's a data scientist doing that work professionally.
And these are the team, you guys, what he's saying that, and what he's talking about is Jeff. Jeff is part of the Cause of America, that the team that we put together. That, by the way, you all can help out. You guys, we've been financed, and you guys have been too out there. The Lindell Offense Fund, you guys, if you guys go there, or you can go to mypillowtrial.com. But we do need your help. We constantly need your help. This is an ongoing thing. Just because Donald Trump got in office, this is we can't make it be a blip in history. And And Sean, I mean, you guys, they were the tip of the spear. They were doing canvassing when no one else was. And then all of a sudden, over the last 4 years, canvassing was done all across our great country. And so you had like a camera on another camera on a diamond heist going, hey, let's make sure, let's extrapolate this like they did in Florida. Those Florida numbers that were stolen from Donald Trump in 2020, which was 960,000, you were able to extrapolate this against the cast vote records, against this other evidence that was out there. We had like 3 camera angles. So when the numbers were that big, when you take over 900,000 votes, it's easy to do that. It's easy to go to someone's house and say, hey, it says 6 people voted here, and then and there's only 1 person living there. That's pretty much explain this on our dirty voter rolls and the dirty computers and then what we've done there, you guys, and by them winning that case, they wanted to shut that down. It's just more of an attack on us. But Sean, I want to tell you,
Mike, people don't know that you helped us with that you funded most of that defense almost all the way through trial. And that was out of offense fund. Without that, I mean, it would have been tough, right?
Yeah, this is before I even had, I don't even know if I had the offense fund then. This back when I spent, Sean, I want to tell you this, the last thing they said, by the way, everybody, we just had the big My Pillow win against this lawfare in Colorado, everybody. And Sean, I want to tell you the last thing that the prosecutor said that their crooked lawyer said to the jury. Now we know Mike Lindell's net worth was worth over 50 million and now it's minus 10 million. But I would like 60 million from you, jury, in damages, because we have to send a message. If it bankrupts My Pillow and Mike Lindell, so be it. Because we need to send a message to the country that you cannot put out disinformation about our elections. And that was the last thing they said to them. I'm going, okay, I got free speech. But anyway, that was a side note. But I want to have you back on in a day, and I'll let the audience know we're going to have Sean back on, because then this will be maybe part 2. Sean was directly involved in Colorado. Well, what came out of Colorado every day when I was just at that trial last month, our great president sent out, he's going after to try and get Tina Peters out. Remember, they asked for the 2020 election, the 2022 election. I told them to ask for 2024 too, by the way, because what are they going to find in 2020 and 2022? They've deleted those. Jenna Griswold, you guys in Dominion, deleted the 2020 election. But you know what we have? What we have is the images that the great Tina Peters took, the backup of her computer before they did spoliation, deleted everything. And Sean, I'm announcing this here to everybody. You guys, you can go to LindellTV here and you go to the features and you scroll over. It says Inside the Machines. We have put up the Antrim County, Michigan report. We put up all the reports but the biggest thing we put up is report number 3 and the actual images from the Tina Peters case, from what's inside those machines, which they're there. So go get yourself a cyber guy. Anybody tells you, well, there's no evidence, it's all there. And so the next time we have Sean on, you guys, we're gonna go through it. Sean, I want to go through the plan, which I think will get Tina Peters out. And but I want to thank you for coming on. I know we're running out of time. We ran out of time, you guys. You guys go to mypillowtrial.com and help us out. Help Sean. The cause of America is helping save this country. And I want to thank you all. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you and God bless. Thank you, Colonel Sean Smith, for all you've done for our country and for all you continue to do.